So good morning, everyone. As you can see, no flashy slides today because welcome to a virtual cafe. If you haven't been to one of our virtual cafes before here with the We Can Project, this is a bit of a forum. It's a discussion, a chance for us to dig into a topic. And today, of course, that topic is goal setting. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm sure we'll have a few others joining us as we go. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carrie Ramsey, and I'm the project manager for the We Can Project. And We Can, if you're not familiar with it, stands for Women Entrepreneurs Can. We are based in Kingston, Ontario, led by Queen's University, and we're funded by FedDev Ontario. So today we're looking to kind of have a discussion, an open discussion. So I hope that you'll participate and I hope that you'll share thoughts and ideas. We'll give a couple ground rules in just a moment. But as we're getting to it, why don't you take a moment in the chat to let us know where you're connecting from, because I know we have folks from all around the world. I also would love it if you would let us know your business name. You never know if someone in the group might be looking for the product or service you offer. So let us know how we can, get in touch with you, if that's a website or social media, whatever you prefer us to know about. And while you're doing that, I'll take a moment to acknowledge that I'm connecting to this workshop from the ancestral territory of the Huron, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwa and Chippewa peoples. And so I hope that today you'll take some time to consider where you may be connecting from in terms of Indigenous territory. And speaking of Indigenous offerings and services, I'm so excited that we here at the We Can Project have more than 100 Indigenous women entrepreneurs who are part of our programs and services. And if you haven't yet checked out our Instagram, I just posted a story this week on one of our incredible clients, Maple Leaf Tours, who received more than $100,000 in a grant money from Tourism Relief. She runs a bus company, and now she's actually looking to start Indigenous tours, specifically looking at educating folks around the residential schools. So yeah, definitely check out her site. I'm going to put a link in here as we get started today, just shortly. But all sorts of stories. And by the way, if you're a We Can client and we haven't yet featured you in our Instagram or social media, reach out to me. You have my email because I invited you to today's event. But we would love to showcase your story if you're a We Can client. And if you're not, it's totally free if you're in the greater Kingston region and if you are a woman from an underrepresented group. So welcome, and I would love to get started. Thanks for you who are all introducing yourselves in the Zoom chat. If you're just arriving, welcome, and we would love for you to do that as well. So today's topic is goal setting. And so I have a poll to get us started here. So I think you should be able to see that poll on your screen. Question is just, how often do you take time for goal setting? We're not judging, all right? This is judgment-free zone and it's anonymous. So I'm not going to start picking on people or calling you out. But the fact is that goal setting sometimes does get lost in the shuffle, of our day-to-day. So we're seeing, a variety here, and I'll give you another, all of you have answered it. There you go. So let's go ahead and share the results of that poll. Can you see that on your screen? Okay, so I would say it's a good mix. Some of you never do, a couple of you, but for the most part, most are, at least engaging in some form of goal setting. And I think that, the longer that we're in business, we realize that that's a really important part of setting some milestones that we want to reach. So are there any burning questions before we get started? I'm just going to mention that you can see how many we have on the call. So if we all take 20 minutes to comment, we're not going to get to everyone. So I'm going to suggest, if you have an answer, I know you do, go ahead and maybe like 2 to 3 minute answers, and then we'll move to the next person just to make sure we get as much input from the group as we can. And the only other ground rule is please do participate. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very quiet in here. And I know most of you, so I know that won't be the case. All right, any burning questions? So before we start, you can either drop them into the Zoom chat or you can just unmute yourself. Just taking a quick look. I don't see anything in the Zoom chat, but the way of questions. All right, so let's get started. I'll go ahead and I'll just launch the first verbal question, which is, what are some of the benefits of goal setting? Let's just throw that out there. Obviously, because we're talking about it, I do believe it's important. Does anybody just want to share, a quick example of a benefit of goal setting. Maybe it's in your business, maybe it's worked for you. Maxine, over to you. And so I'm just going to remind you 2 to 3 minutes for all of us. If you want to
I
do
probably won't even take that.
you go for it.
Goal setting for me allows me to achieve objectives. I try to set my goals weekly, and depending on my schedule. Some weeks are better than others, but at least it gives me a target to go to. You know, I want to meet this objective at this time. And it, you know, it helps me to see it and identify it and progress forward. And that's it.
I love it. Yeah, it allows us to progress. If we want to grow, we have to be pushing ourselves a little bit. Nancy says in the Zoom chat, it helps her to motivate her. So she does it for motivation, which is another good point. Someone else, benefits of goal setting that you've discovered. Rika, go ahead.
So I always feel if I don't have the goals, I will be on this one path and keep distracting on like 15 different things. Because as the business owner, we all know we have like 50 tasks going on in our brain in different tabs. And same on my computer too. I will have like 50 tabs open and like trying to get onto one and then keep distracting. But if I have goals, I feel like I'm more on it keeps me on track.
And I know that you own multiple business, well, one business, but multiple sites. So the larger that business grows, the more that is true. So thank you for sharing that with us, because you've been in business quite a few years now, for sure. Someone's commenting about goals help us, you know, keep on track and not get so distracted by squirrels and bright, shiny objects. Absolutely. Selena, over to you. Oh, we can't hear you. You're having that issue again. Sometimes you have. Why don't you unplug, and sometimes if you go out and come back in, but try it again. Okay, we'll wait, come back to you and maybe just unplug or whatever the magic thing is you usually do. Someone else in terms of the benefits of, oh, okay, thanks, Selena. Benefits of goal setting before we go on to the next question. Something that you've seen a benefit in your business. Maybe for a while you didn't set goals. Katie, go ahead.
I found that if I set goals, and the scary part is telling people I've set goals, they will ask questions, and not even if they're not holding you to it, just asking about the goal makes you want to do it more, because you are feeling like you're held to it.
Yes, absolutely. And that leads beautifully into the next question, which is around the idea of how do you capture those goals? How do you remain accountable? And so I know some of you have accountability partners who are probably on the call now, but how do you capture those goals? Because it's not enough for us just to think of a goal. How do you capture them, or where do you capture them? Totally interested in hearing your comments and thoughts. Go ahead, Julia.
Hey, how's it going? You guys hear me okay? Sweet. So I have ADHD, which I discovered about 2 years ago. So I don't do goals very much, because goals just are something I picture as something I can't accomplish in my mind. So I do tasks. And so accountability for me is in the form of Focusmate, which is an app that I use every day, and I schedule everything that I do through Focusmate. So I run about 6 hours of Focusmate per day to get things done. I'm really bad at administrative tasks. So I do those during Focusmate. And then if I have a bigger goal, as soon as I write down that bigger goal, I have to break it down into small tasks, because one of the mantras is if I can't start the task, then it's too big. So I have to go smaller, smaller, smaller until I can actually do it. And then it's a positive feedback mechanism to doing that. So yeah, bigger goals, tiny tasks, accountability through something like Focusmate to actually get them done.
I love it. And I love when women also share these little apps and tools that they use, because inevitably someone else has aha moments. And I have discovered so many folks since the We Can Project started who have been diagnosed with ADHD, who have it, who've had it a while, or just learned they had it. So this is not an isolated area. And the point is, yeah, you can get lost in a big goal, but having that breakdown really makes a lot of sense. Lots of chat lots of chatter going on down in the Zoom chat. So make sure you check it out as well. All right, someone else in terms of how you capture your goals. How do you codify them, if you will? How do you, I don't want to say write them down, because not everybody writes them down. Go ahead, Sheila.
I apologize for barking dogs if that happens, but I have recently completed the LSpark opportunity. It was great. I had a mentor there, and she got me set up with a 90-day plan. So I've got this sort of 3-month thing where I set up in different categories. So developing my business, content related stuff, marketing stuff. So there's all these different categories, and I create these 90-day goals in there. And I've got ways of assessing, are they in process, on track? I put dates associated with them. So I have that I look at, not as much as I should. And then on a daily basis, I make task lists and I work my way through those. And what the difference that the 90-day plan has made for me is that I've always been really good with task lists, but now I'm turning my tasks lists into things that actually feed into the goals instead of the things I like doing, or the things that are more fun to do. Or so now I'm focusing much more on things that will roll up into those bigger goals in the 90-day plan.
I love that. And when you were talking about being a part of the LSpark, well, about part of Compass North, which is of course a part of the WeCan project, I was thinking about that idea of outside eyes on your business, because you're right, we can set all sorts of fun goals for ourselves, but when somebody, a coach or a business advisor says, you know what, you really should maybe consider a goal in this area if you want to grow that, because I'm guilty of that as well in my business. I just set all sorts of fun goals. But sometimes it's not just the fun goals we need to be setting to move and to grow, right? That's the key. And I guess that's the point of goal setting, of course, is growth. Anyone else in terms of how you capture your goals before we move on to another thought? Jenny, and then Abena.
I use a lot of paper. I have many, many books, and I'll write my goals, and then I'll reverse engineer my actions. And then I shouldn't show this because I did sell stationery, but I got like this from the dollar store. And every week I write out every task I'm doing and everything that keeps me in line, and I can check in and see where I am with my goals. So a lot of paper.
Yeah, my office is brimming with notebooks, both beautiful and cheap, I will say. Just sometimes I have to get my hands on a notebook just to help me. I love it. Abena, over to you.
I too like paper. I love paper and notebooks. So yeah, I like making lists, and I find it helps. Maybe we'll address this in the workshop. I was feeling like the goal was something that was out of control, like get hired by blah, blah, blah. So that you can't really control. But if I want, so I would start to set my goal, let's say register business, and then I would put steps underneath. So what exactly do I need to do to get to that? And so that ties into the task list that's like directly related. And I like to even write them on cue cards. Then you can just see one goal. So if it's register, it's like, okay, go online, pay for this, get credit card, like very, very small achievable things. And once you check off all 4, then you've reached that goal.
I love that idea. Absolutely. And I love what you said right there was, instead of get hired by, right? Rather, maybe it's send out 20 emails this week, right? Because if as you get to know your business, sometimes I have to send out 20 to get 1 yes, right? Well, then it's like, then that's what you can control. And rather than waiting for people to come to you, we can definitely be going out. And eventually, of course, they come to us, but that's great. All right, so I love that. So all sorts of ways that we're capturing those goals. I asked it in the poll how often, and so that you're looking at goal setting, I kind of want to explore this idea of frequency. What are sort of the benefits of, whether it's, some of you said once a year, some of you said once a month, some said once a week, some said never, that's okay. But why have you chosen that? Maybe you haven't, maybe it's just you forget, I don't know. But for those of you who are doing it weekly versus doing it annually, maybe you can just, speak to your approach, and we'll let Tammy kick it off. Oh, Tammy, I can't hear you. Did she just disappear? Oh, no, I can't hear you yet. No, I can't. So I'll come right back to you, Tammy. I know that usually I can hear you. Okay, we'll go over to Liz and come back to Tammy shortly. Sorry, Tammy. Go ahead,
Hi.
Liz.
Oh, sorry, just a minute. I'm trying to figure out something. Hang on. There I am. Hi. So the frequency, I guess in the beginning when I said I never do it, I was thinking of goal setting as far as like the big goal setting, which I have never really done or figured out how to do. But as far as for doing it more often, yeah, I'd like to do it more often. I just find it overwhelming. I forget the girl's name that mentioned she has ADHD, but I have it too. She mentioned tasks. So I have to do it as far as tasks. So I do it often. I just didn't realize that was technically goal setting. But I do find it's very important to do it regularly. Otherwise, I don't get anywhere. It's my accountability tool.
Yeah, oh, I love that. And it's I guess the difference between life happening to you and you taking a little bit more active, proactive role rather than
Exactly.
reacting as things come in. It's like,
Yeah.
no, what do I want to accomplish this week for sure?
Right.
Tammy, are you back with us? Let's try that. No, can't hear you. See your lips moving though. I can't. Maybe go out and come back in. Sometimes that helps. Selena, are you with us now? I mean, I see you. No, what's going on? Nope, can't hear you either. All right, well, let's use the Zoom chat. All right, somebody else who'd like to address sort of that frequency. Megan, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So like I said in the chat, and use the productivity planner. I just got it from Staples, or Chapters actually, and it breaks your tasks into weekly goals, but then it breaks it into daily goals. So if you need to really focus on tasks, you write like the most important task of the day, and then you put that as priority 1, and then it goes down the list of other tasks that maybe need to be done. That's how I achieve like my day-to-day operations. But then every year I take my big goals for the year, and then this book helps me lay out how I'm going to get those goals, because you can have the big goals, and then if you do nothing, then those goals aren't going to be done. So having a plan, big goals, and then breaking them down into smaller chunks. And like I said before, it gives me the motivation to actually do it. And then goals that you maybe thought that you'd never have achieved, you have. Being in business for 7 years, I've definitely never thought that I would be where I am today, starting
Yeah.
from nothing. So
Amazing. Absolutely. And so Liz is asking, can you give details about what the calendar is to buy it? So it's a productivity journal. I heard you say Staples and Indigo.
yeah, I'll try and find the link and post it in the chat.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I've had some other folks saying they've bought books. How many of us? We have bought, sometimes I've bought beautiful books and not filled them out. But I mean, it's like, so I think it's a habit. I honestly think it's a habit. If we start it, we know if we do something 21 days in a row, apparently it sticks. So it's almost like really that being a goal in itself I will write my goals down for 21 days in a row. So whatever works, maybe books don't work for you, but yeah, it does take discipline, Liz, or Rika said as well. All right, so others, whether you plan monthly, weekly, annually, we heard there Megan saying she has a combination. Karen, over to you.
Yeah, I actually do it weekly. And I do it always in kind of checking back to what my overall goal is. So starting kind of with my like strategic for the year, similar to, I don't know what your actual name is, but MV Hodgins. I really like that idea. And it's just the way to kind of keep checking in to see if the trajectory that I'm on is going to get me to where I want to be. And so it's, are the actions that I'm doing going to fulfill? I mean, everyone's kind of saying the same thing in their own way, but, are the actions that I'm taking going to fulfill the goal that I need to be able to get to the bigger plan?
Okay, so I'm hearing you say you do
that-
have a bigger plan, though. You do have that bigger goal.
Yeah, and I don't know names, but the woman that said kind of beginning with at the end and then reverse engineering. It's kind of starting with beginning with the end in mind and then looking at like what are all the actions that need to be put in place. And so, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that you have, for myself, I have to do it frequently to ensure that I kind of stay on track. Things get derailed and life happens sometimes. And so it's also having that mechanism to be able to, when you have to tap out, to have that way to come back online.
To get back on track. Yeah, I love that idea. Joanne, over to you. Joanna, sorry, over to you.
So as far as frequency goes, I also do it. Actually, I'm going to put my hand down. I do it pretty regularly. I do it almost daily. And the reason for that is because all the tasks and to-dos that I do feed into my goals. So I'm constantly looking at them. Another thing that I do is I will create big long-term goals, and I'll keep those a little bit vague, just so that I have a direction that I want to go to. And then I keep my more closer goals more specific. That way I can sort of try things, pivot, adjust, make whatever mistakes I have to, kind of sort of like course correct if I have to. So that's another thing that I do is I've got a pretty good sense of what I want in the future, but I allow myself the flexibility to play with timelines or play with some of the tasks that I want to do, and then keep the closer ones specific. I also write down what I want to do for the next day. What are, you know, what's going to make my tomorrow the most productive that I can. And that's something else that I do.
Yeah, I think it's Julia who just said, sometimes I actually avoid work by making lists and planning things to do. So that's a really good point, is that goal setting is a task in itself, but it's not the whole day. That's a really good point. Thanks for that, Joanna. Cheyenne, over to you.
Just another note, I'm another weekly. I do my broader ones, but similar to what she was saying, I keep them a little more vague. I like doing it weekly because I find I can take an afternoon on a Sunday or whenever, and I can go into goal planning mode, and that's like a different cognitive space. And then I can lay out the tasks for the days. And then during the week, I can just be in like go, go, go mode, and being able to trust that whatever it is I'm doing, I don't have to sit and think and be like, is this aligned with my goals? I don't have to do that cognitive shift. So it makes me much more efficient.
Yeah, and that brings up a point, and then over to Tammy, which fingers crossed we can hear you. But I find it hard to set big goals when I'm at my desk where I usually do tasks. I'll be honest. I have to get out of that space. I have to, and I can't go for a walk because I want to write things down, right? And I know we can't all do retreats and stuff. Wouldn't we love to? But you know, it's even just to go to a coffee shop or somewhere where I'm away from my busy area, because then I can sort of separate myself and think of those bigger goals. So sometimes when Megan says she sets goals on vacation. So yeah, sometimes it's even on the airplane, we're in the car, like when we're moving. I don't know what works for you, but those big goals are important. And as much as the daily tasks are as well, you're right. I think it's important to know kind of where we're going and where we want to be at the end of the year. Otherwise, we ended up at the same place at the end of each year. And why we're doing this today is because we're almost at the end of a year, right? So we're kind of getting ramped up to set hopefully some goals for 2023. Tammy, how's it going over there?
I don't know. How's it going now?
Yes, we can hear you.
You know what? It's because I was on a call earlier and my AirPods died on me. That's what it was. Anyway, I love the idea of creating bigger goals elsewhere. That's honestly one of my major struggles is the big goals. My office is kind of blurred out, but I've got one cork board there, another cork board here. I've got a magnet board here. I've got a dry eraser board here, and I've got a desk full of stickies. Like I've got more freaking goal, and I keep about 3 different journals going at any one time. And you know, like each area kind of has different goal areas, and I just feel like that's all I do. I'm spinning my wheels on goals, but you know, what's my big, and then something comes up, like, as you know, something just came up, and now my mind is, I got no sleep last night, of course, so now I'm not going to be able to get anything done today. So this is a very timely session, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. I'm learning some great information. Thank you for this.
Awesome. Julia, over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to mention for me, the bigger, I mean, I'm bombarded with goals and ideas constantly. It's probably why I have the peril of being like a serial entrepreneur, but I have to filter things out. So filtering out is such a huge part of goal setting and task setting, just to know like what's in the ecosystem of what I'm trying to build and what doesn't belong in there. And that includes like even clients that don't necessarily fit in with my business model. Like anything that's extra has to somehow come out, and I have to create like a parameter system to get that out. And then day to day, so I set a to-do list daily. And then, so if there's a bigger goal, like I'm working on a coffee table book. So obviously the goal is to have the book, but then that's broken down in micro tasks. So in the day, I know with the goal of the book in mind, I'll write down like, finish the first 10 pages. That's doable in a day, and that's reasonable. And I don't do books or planning. I just have like what do you call them? Like shopping lists, like just like a pad with lists. Yeah. And so just daily, I write down the things that are realistic for me to do in a day, and then I cross them off. And whatever didn't make it the day before is the thing I start with the next day. And that's it. No book, no weekly thing. I can't do that just for me because it's too much. And then once something big comes in, it's got to get like filtered out. I have to not do it. So to me, it's kind of like the opposite, where I have to just like try to stay very focused and not have like new opportunities and new things come into my life and distract me and become new goals. I don't want more goals. I need like fewer goals.
I love that. And so that kind of brings up another question. By the way, Cheyenne had said in there in the chat, having a strategy will really help you filter out, some of those things that come up. And I know Tammy and I were chatting just last night about an opportunity that's come up, but I feel it aligns beautifully with what her overall goal is, which, and so that's the question to ask. If you don't know where you want to be, then you don't know if this is something to say yes to or not. Because every time we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. So we have to ask ourselves if it's a good yes. And the only way we know that is if we know where we're heading, right? And what that destination, is this going to get me, on the path, or am I going to have to really detour around? Because if you're on a detour, we know that's the long way around. So ideally, we want to be known for one thing. We want to be great and really, reach, as I think Julia said, the right audience, also knowing who that audience is that we have in mind. Tammy, go ahead.
It's funny, just, with what you said, you were so right about like, if I'm really thinking about taking up that offer and kind of following that stream, I struggle with, I have a part-time job with the municipality I live in, and I struggle working that job. And last night I kind of said, if I do this, I've got to quit that job. Like, there's no way I can have my energy there and there. So what you're saying is so true. And it's funny how I flowed there without even knowing that that's what I was doing.
Yeah, so it's a yes to one thing. It's then usually, again, when we say yes to something, we're saying no to, maybe it's a good no, right? Maybe it's a good no that we need to say, especially if it's a revenue generating opportunity and we're replacing other income. Yeah, okay, cool. I love that. So what about, let me ask, okay, so Julia just mentioned about accountability, and I wanted to actually touch on that. Do you create your goals in isolation? And many of you, let's just put up your physical or hand, probably just a physical one. Are you a solopreneur? How many solopreneurs do we have on the call right now? Like, and that means you don't have employees. So a bunch of us, right, are solopreneurs. So, I mean, we have a lot of conversations with ourselves, right? Does anyone have suggestions, or have they gotten together with another business bestie, or just someone who's not a close family or friend? Okay, that's different. Someone who has a little bit of business background, so that you can maybe create these goals, not together, that's not what I mean, but get some insight, I think, from someone else. Just curious about that. So let's go to Jenny, Katie, and then Tammy.
So I'm not a solopreneur, but I do talk to myself a lot. So I don't know if you know Stephanie Rayton, she owns Mops Inc. So we kind of started out in the beginning together. And whenever I've hit that wall where I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore, I'm just too caught up in this, we get together and she's like, oh no, you're doing this right, we're good. And she helps me set my goals that way. So yeah, and I'm also a mentor with Mentor Connect Quinty, if anybody is looking for a mentor in this area.
Brilliant. Love that. Love that. Katie, over to you.
I've got a bunch of other entrepreneurs and business owners that I stay in contact with, but just before the pandemic started, we started a business networking group in my teeny neighborhood in Toronto. And once we got to know each other, it ended up being the same people coming back and over and over, and we turned into more of a business development group. So we meet every 2 weeks and end up having a business discussion. So now I've got this group of people from all different industries, men, women, and everyone that I can turn to for their advice. And then we've got a group chat just of the women. If I've got a question that's woman specific, it's great for a chat.
I love that. And just before we get to Tammy, I know many of you have taken part in our masterminds, etc. But remember, you can start your own. Like, I love what Katie's talking about. Like, if you have a group of business besties, as I call them, or whatever you want to say, people that you feel aligned with, you feel connected with, they're not maybe direct competitors, that you can create that little group. Then goal setting is maybe a topic you can bring up in that group, especially around this time of the year, and say, how do you handle goals? And that's obviously the intention of this virtual cafe and our masterminds, but you can start that yourself. And I think that's a great example. And I love how it's developed. Over to you, Tammy.
Yeah, as you're aware from, my last mastermind, I ended up getting an accountability partner, and we chat once a week, and it has been so good on mainly business, but not just business related ideas, but we're really there to boost each other up. I think the hardest part though is just starting, like getting the nerve to say, hey, making that first call. I know I suffer from that whole imposter syndrome, and I don't belong there, dare to lead type of thing. It's hard as crap, right?
It is. And I find the older we get, it doesn't really get much easier. It's and you're gonna laugh, but I often associate this with dating, right? But sometimes not necessarily say, would you like to be my accountability partner for life, right? That might not be the right way to start it off. Maybe would you be interested in going to coffee and talking about your business and my bit, and then if it's a click, then maybe you set up a second one, and and then maybe eventually you are forever accountability partners or something, or maybe not. So I always suggest, especially if you're unnerved by it, just invite someone for coffee or a Zoom call. And the beauty with Zoom is they don't even have to be in your own city, right? So Selena, over to you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yay.
I figured out technology. I'm not a good tech person, so I'm really proud of myself right now. I wanted to add on to that I have had an accountability partner before, and the vibe just didn't mesh, and it almost felt, and lovely person, but there was just kind of this weighing sense of, unfortunately it went more, we were talking about her personal life and not actually sticking on the track. So I like what you said, Carrie, about it does kind of feel like you're asking somebody out on a date, and you're kind of seeing how the vibe is. So I guess I'm asking everyone is, how do you obtain an accountability partner? I mean, Carrie, you already kind of touched on it, but what are some things that we should be looking for? Because for me, I like to chat things out, and I find goal setting is really important to kind of talk to somebody about. So yeah, I would love some advice on that.
Love it. Any tips, ideas, whether in the chat or yeah, Julia, go ahead.
I just have a question about accountability partners, I guess, because when I hear that, to me, I just think of them in practical terms. To me, these are just strangers throughout my day that I co-work with. I don't. So I just, you can define what an accountability partner is in this context, so I understand. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll define how I think of it, and anyone else can chime in if you think differently, for sure. We sort of think of it as sort of a slightly more formal relationship where you have this person, likely in business, and many times it's a woman for our community, where you connect with them on a regular basis. Typically that's once a week, just to keep you on track. So it's another human who knows about what you talked about last week that you said you were going to do. And then when you check in on a Friday morning at 9 by text or by phone or by Zoom, whether it's for 5 minutes or 30, it's like, hey, so how did that go last week, Julia? You said you were going to do, I'm just curious, how's it? And not in a judgmental way, but in a way that's meant to encourage and push each of those people forward. So that's sort of what we mean by that. And it's not just someone you kind of meet once a year, but a more of a really ritualized, I would say, type of a habit. Tammy has an accountability partner, so I'm gonna let you speak to that a little bit more.
I do, and you know, it's funny because about 2 weeks ago we actually talked about just this. She felt that I was providing more to her than she was providing to me, which is totally false. And I equate it to, you know, there's a picture of footprints, and like, you know, when he needs you, there's only one set of footprints, and you don't know who it is. And you know, we take turns as who's carrying who at the time. And right now, like today, she totally carried me. Like it was, I couldn't have done stuff without her help today. It's definitely a give and take, and it's always business related. But because we're so close with our business, there is personal relations involved as well. Like we can't talk to our spouse about, you know, when I talk about my business, my spouse just totally, you know, eyes glaze over and jaw drops a little bit, and you know, she's out of there. But with my accountability partner, I can just say, you know what, that client really sucked, and she's like, oh, I'm totally there with you, you know, what do we do with that? And she gets it. How we hooked up, Selena, is we jived. Like it's definitely, like Carrie said, it's like dating. Like you're not going to ask someone who you don't dig out on a date, right? And it's kind of the same thing with the accountability partner. If there's something that you like about that, whether you admire them or you trust them, or you know, you want to emulate them, or you feel that there's a commonality, I think there has to be some sort of thread in order to really have an effective, you know, the way, that's the way I'm feeling with my accountability partner anyway.
Yeah, and I think Tammy, you originally met yours in the mastermind, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, you can even like, hey, it's just like dating. You can creep the person's Instagram page, not their personal one, but their business one. You can get a good vibe from someone. That's why I believe we should be authentic on our social media, because it should give the vibe of who we are. And so, you know, the other thing is that for those of you who are weekend clients who are in our private Facebook group, you know, you can always post, right? To say, hey, I'm, you know, looking for an accountability partner, happy to, you know, meet, you know, people for one-on-one for coffee from time to time. If you're interested, it's like, you know, you could always do that, I guess. So different types of approaches. Katie, what about you? Go ahead.
What about an accountability group?
Sorry, I pushed the wrong button there.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes. I don't know if I
Okay.
muted you or everyone. I don't know what happened there. So go ahead. Yeah, an accountability group.
An accountability group. So our networking group in our neighborhood, we meet every 2 weeks. There's only about half a dozen people that come out, and we always end with accountabilities. We ask about the previous accountability and then ask for something else. And it's got to be something that you wouldn't have done regularly. It's something to push yourself a little bit, push your business to move you forward. And the best part is it's run by, we've got a fitness coach, a personal trainer. So he knows about goals and accountabilities and what you should be. So if someone says, you know, I'm going to get half my taxes done, he says, okay, well, what does that mean? How can we quantify that? What specifically are you going to get done? What are you going to, you know, you're going to get up to April done. You're going to have it in the, you know, the spreadsheet. You're going to have the stuff scanned, and you swear at him, because you know he holds you to like okay, and you actually have to define what that's going to be. But it makes you think about, like, is this achievable? Can I actually get this done in the timeline that I've set out? But you know, now I'm saying it in front of 4 people, not just one person. And if that person's, you know, because if you just have a partner, if that person's not available, you're kind of off the hook. But if there's 4 or 5 of you, you know, it's a bit more casual, but it's a bit more, you know, you can't get off the hook that easily.
I love that. And when you're talking about the coach there, or the gym owner, I was thinking I also follow SMART goals. So many of our clients know that if we're in a one-on-one coaching session, you know, I will definitely say, so when's that going to be done by? And what is it? How many? Tell me how you will know if you have achieved that goal. So I was kind of listening earlier when people were saying that they don't set specific goals, which is perfectly fine. You know, my tactic is more to set specific goals that have time attached to them. So yeah, and sometimes it works better when I'm coaching my clients than when I'm doing my own business. So that's why you need accountability too. But I love this idea of accountability groups. And I love somebody in the chat said, yeah, go ahead and why not start one? You know, we have masterminds of 10 people in the We Can project, but that doesn't stop someone from going and, you know, either posting in the group to find women, or maybe, you know, 3 or 4, they don't have to all be women, they could be men as well. Whatever is going to help your business to stay focused. And I love that someone had said that you should, yeah, thanks for that, Maxine. That's what SMART goals means. Somebody talked about setting some ground rules. I forget who said that earlier. Sheila said, I think it's important to set expectations at the outset so you're clear on the nature and what you want to focus on. And I would also suggest maybe for an accountability group, before you know it's the right people, right? Maybe just set a timeline on, say, hey, let's meet for 3 months. And then we'll decide at the end of that, you know, who wants to continue. You don't even know if you want to continue, right? But after that, sometimes you can get to know people, who's showing up, who's not showing up, who's, you know, that's the biggest thing I found with accountability is both people have to be accountable to show up, which is important. So yeah, lots of good mentions in the chat there. Oh, so examples of ground rules. Anybody else want to jump in on that one? If you were to have either a group or just a partnership as well, any idea of ground rules that somebody wants to talk about? Any ideas for that? Maybe those of you who are in some of these groups.
Come on, ladies, help me out here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Maxine's like, help me out. Katie, what are some kind of ground rules that you might have in that group?
For goals or for just in general?
I think just in general for the group.
I don't think we've ever actually set out specific rules. You know, we have had a couple people leave there. We've had one incident where two business owners had a misunderstanding outside of the group, just doing business with each other. But other than that, it's just been, you know, be supportive, show up when you're available, promote each other.
Okay, great. Yeah. So sort of the general be a good human rules.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, anyone else? Maybe you would have, maybe you're thinking of starting one. What, and I could see in the chat that some of you are, which is awesome. You know, what are some of those ideas that you might have if you're going to start this accountability group or something? Maybe you don't want to call it an accountability group. Katie called it a business development group, if I'm not mistaken, which is also a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry, I just want to, I'll briefly explain what we're doing because it sounds like other people are interested. I'd love to see this grow into other things. So we will start, you know, just with some casual conversation, but then we have a discussion topic. So if someone has a problem, business problem that they want to bring to the floor, they're having a problem with, you know, they can't get this, you know, kind of customer in the door, or, you know, this has happened to them. How have you dealt with that? And having people from across so many different sectors and industries, it's been really eye-opening to see how people have dealt with that in all different situations. So we'll have about 15 minutes of business conversation. If we've got new people, if you're a brand new group opening up, I would just suggest that, you know, you have a 10-minute presentation from each person to introduce their company. And once you've got a good feeling of everyone, then you can move it on to business conversation. And then we do accountabilities just in the last 10 minutes. And it's a 1-hour meeting.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, for me, a ground rule will just be, what's the purpose of this group? So everyone understands, like, it's not to sell to the other people in the group, like, you know, so there's that to me as a ground rule, like, don't come and just sell your essential oils to me necessarily. Like, that's not what it's for. It's so that we all in this group can grow our business, but not like selling to each other. I think that's important also. Like, you know, sometimes these things you think they don't need to be said, and sometimes they need to be said. So, okay, I love it. So, Joanna, over to you.
I just wanted to touch on
oils. Go ahead.
Sorry, what?
I was saying there's nothing wrong with essential oils, in case someone thought I was slamming that industry.
I just wanted to touch on what Katie said. I've done a lot of groups in the past, and I find that usually it's like the ones that I went to that I found were the most effective was everybody might have like 5 minutes or something to talk about what they're doing, what they're working on. And then people kind of chime in, like she said, if somebody has an issue with something, they'd be like, oh, have you tried this? Or if you haven't tried this. And what's great about the groups is there's so many different people there that can provide knowledge. The other thing was, one of the groups that I went to had somebody who would write down everybody's, what are you going to have done for the next session? So somebody would keep track of everything. And then it's like, okay, what are you going to have done for the next session? And yeah, I found those were sort of the most effective.
Yeah, that's a good point, because who remembers who said the last, like, how are they going to be accountable if someone's not writing it down? But that in itself is an important role in the group. So that's a really good point. I had a thought and it went out of my head. Something about accountability showing up. Nope, it's gone. It's gone right out of my head. It's okay. So yeah, I think that this is great. Oh, I know, it was around timing and frequency. So like we've been talking about weekly, and I know this, and this does tie in with this goal setting idea, but because I think on a weekly basis, we do a lot, right? And if it's a monthly, sometimes we can lose, momentum if we're not kind of being reminded weekly. And so for me, when I hold the masterminds, what I call, which is an accountability group, it's just a different name. And that's exactly what we do in these groups. But it's an hour, it's 1 hour, because I think that, if it's gonna be 3 hours, it's hard maybe for someone to commit to 3 hours once a week. Whereas I think we do it every 2 weeks because I run 2 masterminds, but yeah, it's the frequency of it, make sure that's realistic. And then also, how long are you meeting? Make that realistic. And maybe there's one person who's like all for 4 hours, but if, it has to be really in jiving with the rest of the group for sure. All right, love it. Okay, so obviously lots of excitement around that. And I'll put a note in the chat if anyone doesn't belong to the We Can private Facebook group, but if you're on the e-newsletter, you would get it. Because again, whether it's in this group or you want to reach out to others, then you can certainly do that. Let's circle back to this idea of goal setting and just ask about, what about if you don't meet a goal? What do you do if you don't meet a goal? And happy to be, have some honest conversation about missing goal. Like you had this, you were supposed to do this, and I put supposed to in quotation marks. What happens next? Sheila.
I'm actually going to ask if we could look at maybe a different question, because which is sort of in between the two. So we've talked about setting goals and all the different ways that people do that. But to me, there's, and we've talked about accountability, but I feel like I can talk to people and say I'm going to do stuff, and then I just get busy doing other stuff, or I focus on the fun things. So maybe it is the same question about not meeting the goals, but I feel like it's more about the execution of getting there, as opposed to, okay, now I didn't get there, what do I do? So I'm just curious what others, because I often struggle with that. I'm great at creating them, and I have strategies for not achieving them, but I'd really like to close that gap so that I don't have that outcome.
All right, over to you, Julia.
I mean, frankly, I grieve the loss if it's a major goal for like just not being able to accomplish it. Like I've lost book deals, I've lost clients because I didn't have my diagnosis yet and I had no idea what was happening and I wasn't doing anything. I can't do anything about it though. There's no point beyond just being like, okay, that sucked, moving on. And then small things, just try them again the next day. Sometimes I have a very crappy day and I don't do anything, but that's just part of having ADHD and that's how it goes. So I just start again the next day and get motivated, and sometimes it works great. So yeah, but I think the ultimate like thesis for all of this is like, you can't change that. You can only change looking ahead, right? So you just like wake up the next day and figure out, okay, if this is still important to me, I'm going to pursue it. If it's a loss and it's damage that you can't repair, move on. There's nothing else you can do about it. There's little point in, I think, like addressing it. And I think sometimes it's realizing that that loss could lead to other opportunities as well, right? Like things open up when you just don't like have that time that you need to spend working on whatever thing that wasn't working anymore or chasing it.
Yeah, and I think it's Katie who had said in the Zoom chat about regrouping as well, because you're right, we can get we can grieve, and we should grieve, because it's a natural thing. But also if we are in grief too long, then again, I like this idea you were saying, okay, the next day, right? So it's like it's a moment in time, and then we are moving on, because, you know, especially if there's a goal that's important to us, to lose track of that just because we didn't make one milestone doesn't mean we can't maybe push that milestone or that signpost or that goal post a little bit. And so giving ourselves permission, forgiving ourselves, not being so hard on ourselves, because we all are. Like, I'm not a loser, I'm not a failure, I'm just moving that goalpost because of something, whether it was in my control or out of my control. And there we are. Yeah, Katie says, allow yourself the grace to be human. Cheyenne, over to you.
Katie mentioned in the chat to see if there's anything you can learn from it. So I like to see them as learning opportunities on two levels. There can be, if I'm not okay that I missed this and I let it fall through the cracks, where can I up my game in making sure I meet my goals? And the second one can be, am I accurately calculating what I can get done and what I'm capable of doing? Or am I overcommitting and I want to be conscious of that moving forward?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Is this goal unrealistic? And am I constantly setting myself up to fail? Often when we do that, we're comparing ourselves to someone else because they have that goal, not realizing, oh, they've got a team of 7 people. Like, I can't possibly keep up with that same goal structure. So yeah, that's key. And I think even in these accountability groups, that's why I kind of like when people are sort of like, as solopreneurs, especially if you don't plan to grow your team, maybe you just enjoy being that. You know, have realistic team members there too. I mean, I think we should be pushed. I always believe that. But, you know, also don't compare yourselves to somebody else's story, right? That's for sure. All right. So anyone else? We're flying through this hour, but I just want to make sure that we, and so the question again is sort of around this idea of what happens if you don't make, does anyone else have any other things? I mean, we've all missed goals. We've all forgotten about goals. January 1st comes around every year and we're like, oh yeah, that goal I had last year. I refuse to call them resolutions, but I'm sure someone I know calls them intentions, right? And we're coming very closely to January 1, when that's just the world is going to be asking us, you know, what are your intentions for 2023? For me, I want to make sure, and I do have some specific goals, but I want to make sure I'm not in the same place December 31st, 2023 as I am January 31st, 2021 or 2022. I don't want to like be in the same place ideally. If I can be growing in small ways, and I'm a big believer in the slow grow, I'm okay with that, but I want to still be growing for sure. Any other thoughts on that or questions? Does anybody have a question that you want to throw out to the group in the remaining few minutes here? Question around goal setting, maybe, that you want to ask the group. While you're thinking, I'll check my group. Yeah, any specific challenges? Oh, go ahead, Deanna, sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you know, everything that people were saying, and I find that sometimes I have these goals and then I realize, you know, when I refer back to them, I think, oh, that's not really so important anymore. So it's like, and sometimes I wonder why is that not important anymore? And where is it really not important anymore? I mean, it's kind of a philosophical question, but I just, you know, wow, one day it was like burning in me. And then, you know, maybe a few weeks later or a couple months later, it's like, that wasn't a great idea. And then obviously you can also have the opposite thing where the thing that was burning then is like, oh yeah, that's still really important. So it's like, I'm not even sure what my question is, but just that, you know, how it can be so important one day and then fizzle out.
Yeah, Karen has a thought about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think to your for some reason.
Deanna, yourself?
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, we were having an echo there. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Karen, try it out.
Yeah, just to that point, I think one of the things, I have a lot of experience in the corporate world. And, you know, it's a lot of that modalities and kind of methodologies that I've brought into the work that I'm doing now. And, you know, starting 20 years ago, what there were like all of these like long-term plans, like companies would do 5 and 10-year plans. But I think that the way that the world is changing, that's not realistic anymore. And so I like this, like learning this agile approach and learning kind of more short-term sprinty approaches. I think that as a small business owner now, I think that it kind of lets myself off the hook of feeling like I failed if the goal that I set out when I started, I'm not achieving anymore. And this, I think that not just in myself, but what I've learned as I've kind of joined the business community is there is a lot of that. We start with this business vision and we think what we want to do, and hold ourselves to kind of fulfill that, where sometimes along the way it doesn't feel anymore, or it doesn't feel right anymore. We're kind of pivoting or shifting or changing because new things are coming up, and we've got all this exposure to mass media and information of something that you didn't think before. So that's something too, like even in the corporate, I'm still consulting with a corporate company now, and that's something that they're introducing, and it's agile, and they do these like sprints and retrospectives, and then they're like, okay, is this what we still want to do? So I really am a fan of that, and that's what I'm trying to kind of integrate into how I'm doing things. And I just, to your point about like you not being on the same trajectory, I like
Oh, did she freeze?
the value, I think, of being able to shift and change as it works for you. So
absolutely. Yeah, and we'll go to Tammy and then wrap up with Julia, I think, in terms of time. But I just wanted to slide something in there. You were talking about also these burning things. Sometimes I find those burning things I feel as important is because I'm looking at someone else's business and I'm thinking, oh, they're doing that. I should also be on TikTok, or I should also. But then it's just burning in that moment. I realize that's actually not a part of my plan, or it doesn't feel right to me. And the other thought I'll just leave also is a while ago, I stopped thinking of it necessarily in terms of goals as like my to-do list. It's more my to-be list, right? So it's who do I want to be in the world? How do I want to show up? And then what tasks and goals maybe align with who I want to be, as opposed to maybe what a big accomplishment I want to achieve. So I'll just throw that out, the to-be list versus the to-do list. Tammy, over to you.
It's funny. So actually today's session has been very, I don't know what word, but I have come to a realization, and Cheyenne helped me, Karen helped me, everybody actually helped me. I don't have any long-term business goals. I actually have one. I want to own a tractor. I know I'll never own a tractor. It's like $120,000 a tractor I want. But you know what? Every time I drive by a tractor, I literally say tractor, like, that's my goal in life, right? But for my business, Cheyenne said it in the notes. Thank God I didn't set a goal that I was so focused on that I couldn't grow to where I am today. And where my business goes, who knows? And as Carrie said, you know what my goal is? I journal every single night, and in my gratitude, my goal is to make people feel better. And I just want them. How can I help them feel better? So I guess that's important to me, is the goal is. And I think I came to that realization today that I'm okay not having a long-term business goal. I really am at this point. And I think I just came to that revelation.
There you go. Own it. I love it. Julia, over to you.
Following up on what Tammy just said, but turning it inward, I think the biggest thing is to kind of realize, well, what makes you happy as far as the way that you run your business and what that means in terms of scaling it or not. Like I had tried scaling a business, and then I had staff and I had a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, I do not like this. I don't want this. This is not for me. And so I just made sure that I'm a very highly paid consultant, because obviously I can't scale the money that way, but then I can just make myself scarce, and also I can, work less. But that's really just like a self-reflection of like what makes me happy and the kind of business I want to own, because I think goals come from that. Like if I look at others that have like these major companies, I'm like, well, I'm okay. That's not what makes me happy. I don't need to model like myself after someone else's dream. So I think like that personal reflection of like what in the day-to-day is the kind of business owner that you want to be that will ultimately make you happy day-to-day living your life, I think is important to acknowledge.
So important. I love that. I also love that we now have a campaign, hashtag Tractor for Tammy. As we wrap up, I just want to say that I know that we're women on this call of different ages, different backgrounds, but for the younger women on the call, I think you're hearing some real wisdom from some women who have learned some things along the way. So, I mean, I love our young entrepreneurs to also be on these calls, because sometimes you can like learn these things. You're like, it takes like 40 or 45 years to figure them out. But you're like, wait a minute, I don't have to be that company. What makes me feel good? What do I want to achieve? And that shifts the perspective. And I think as women also, we also don't have to be not who we are, right? We don't have to fit into a mold that was maybe created by a system that does not suit us and our needs and our priorities. So let's own that and give ourselves permission just to grow at our own pace and have some of those milestones along the way. So thanks everyone. I'm just gonna make sure, what I'll do is I'll make sure everyone has the Zoom chat who is on the call today. And if for some reason I don't, I've noted who's here, so that shouldn't be a problem. But you have my email, but here it is one more time. If anybody wants to reach out, because I don't send it to you by the end of the day. All right, so thank you everyone. We'll wrap up today. We're out of time, but I do want to thank you all for participating. So have a fabulous, fabulous week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.